There's one year I didn't know what I wanted to be for Halloween. And you're like, well, what do you want to be for Halloween? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe a turtle so I don't have to...
Maybe a Viking princess?
We can get into that
later. That was another year. Hi, I'm Teresa, and welcome to Cocoon Cast, where we deep dive into movies and discuss all things cinema.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Today we'll be reviewing the new movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, and for a retro rewind, The Breakfast Club.
And we also have some surreal Hollywood news.
Some of Hollywood's elite are waiving their privilege, and John Williams may be leaving on a high note.
Let's get started.
Growing up sheltered from the city above them, the Turtle brothers hone their martial arts skills, but desperately yearn for fame and acceptance. When an opportunity to take down a mutant crime syndicate presents itself, they must decide what is more important, pursuing their dreams or tackling their fears.
Rebecca, let's talk a little bit about why you chose this movie.
I presented this movie as an opportunity for our Cocoon Cast team to look at how a legacy franchise can be reinterpreted for the modern age. It's been slightly happening with Spider-Verse, but the Turtles are their own original protagonists for this movie. I know the cultural reach is intense with this franchise. Michael Bay recently did an interpretation.
Michael Bay has done a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie.
2 of them. He produced both of them. It was his company, Platinum Dunes.
Okay.
They got the right.
And he blew up turtles. Somewhere turtles are blowing up.
True confession, I have not seen the Bay Turtle films. I actively avoided them once I saw the trailer.
Okay, so we've talked about Transformers and their Bayformers.
Yes.
Is there like some cute little title with the turtles like Bayertles or...
Bertles?
Exactly, Bertles.
Honestly, I'm not that involved in the Turtles franchise fandom. I'm vaguely familiar with the basics of the Turtles. I read the Laird and Eastman comics a little bit when I was younger. They're a great parody of the Frank Miller style that was going around at the time.
Okay, and tell our cinema community if they have missed who Frank Miller is.
So Frank Miller is the reason we have a dark Batman.
That's right. Oh, and I know who Frank Miller is. Over the years, we've talked about Frank Miller. You're a big fan.
I'm not a big fan.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're a fan?
I'm a fan. I can appreciate what he does, but I'm not a huge fan.
Okay. Well, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles predate you.
Most definitely.
Yes.
The Turtles were around in the latter part of the 80s, and they became really popular after the first 3 movies, partially in part to Jim Henson's creature effects that were used on these movies.
Okay. No, and again, that makes sense to me that would be before you.
There's also a lot of Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoons that came out when I was a kid.
Honestly, I'm amazed at how universal the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are. And as you said, our team wanted to go see it because it is one of those classic films. And I'll be honest with you, when they first came out, I wouldn't have thought this would constitute a classic, meaning I thought, okay, kind of a flash in the pan. It's kind of fun. It's kind of cute. I remember my younger cousins were big fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I know this predates you, but you and I had a discussion recently. Something you did not know, which made me laugh, is when your dad and I actually dressed up as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I did not know this until you revealed this to me.
This is recent news, no pictures, but you can only imagine what that actually looked like. Dad and I literally had cardboard boxes. We cut out the cardboard boxes so there was a shell. We actually painted, I painted, Dad was at work, I believe, and I literally painted little shells on. We went to one of the chain stores, bought some sweats, green sweats. We literally had green sweats. We had shells over, and we did the face paint in green. I don't think we did our hair green, but we were walking around as turtles, and of course, turtles were big back then, so nobody really asked, oh, who are you? They just said, oh, that's interesting.
Well, I find it funny that you've never told me this, because there's one year I didn't know what I wanted to be for Halloween, and you're like, well, what do you want to be for Halloween? I'm like, I don't know, maybe a turtle so I don't have to...
Maybe a Viking princess?
We can get into that
Yeah,
later.
that was another year.
The Valkyrie was another year.
Yes.
But I remember I didn't want to deal with anybody because I was just so introverted out at that point. I'm like, I just want to be a turtle with a shell. And you're like, okay, let's do that. You never brought this up then.
Well, I guess it would have made sense. It did make sense when the movie was present.
That makes sense.
So, yes, I would understand that. So, I would say that it would be a part also.
Okay, that makes sense. I think it's just interesting to see the different versions of the turtles that have made their way across the landscape. The first Mutant Ninja Turtle movie that I saw was the CG animated film with Dad.
And that was the Will Arnett?
No, Will Arnett was involved with the Bay-produced Turtles.
Oh, wow. So Lego Batman was a turtle.
Yes. Lego
and
Batman.
Michael Bay was part of this.
Yes, his company, Platinum Dune, secured the rights pretty easily when they were looking for a live-action
And every time you say this, I hear Platinum Dude, not Platinum Dune, to be clear.
Sand Dune.
Yes, right.
Sand Dune.
Well, and I have goodwill. Like I said, my cousins had watched it. The trailers, and let's remind our cinema community, we go in blind, which means we watch trailers, know a little tiny bit about the movie, but we don't extensively read. So going in blind, the trailers was enough to compel me.
I was really surprised about that because I know you've been really interested in animation post Spider-Verse, seeing how that changes.
That is correct.
I've never had to drag you to an animated movie, but I've noticed you've taken a more of an active interest. So I was really pleasantly surprised that you jumped on board with the idea.
Well, it had a little bit of a grungy feel, a little bit of an edge feel, which to me felt a little bit more energizing versus 4 turtles hanging out in a sewer. It's a little bit rough, a little bit edgy. Art direction was really great. And as you said, the animation, I'm not sure of the technical term of the animation, but it was fast and quick. And
it was very snappy. I was really impressed with the color choices too. There is a definite color palette to this movie. It's not a black and white movie. It's not a muted gray palette. It's a very vibrant neon tinged palette.
And lots of, as you said, lots of color. The vividness, that's a great word. I think there was a lot of vividness within the color. I think had it been flatter or muted or just kind of a matte finish versus feeling a little shiny, I think that would have detracted from the movie.
I think I would have been kind of disappointed. I know the original comic is in black and white, but I think audiences nowadays are looking for something more visually engaging, and I think this kind of fits the bill on that.
I would agree with that. And well cast.
Yes, the voice acting, I was pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of celebrities in this cast. I want to point out one in particular.
Sure.
Brady Noon has worked with Seth Rogen, who, if you've seen any of the marketing material, is all over this movie. Brady's worked with Seth on another film. It was called Good Boys that I saw with Dad.
Okay, I was going to say, that doesn't ring a bell to me. Also, we should point out Seth Rogen wrote it and produced it?
Yes.
And did he directed it also?
No, that is Jeff Rowe.
Jeff Rowe. Oh, that's right. That's Jeff Rowe. Okay. Correct.
So Jeff did several episodes of Gravity Falls. He wrote for 11 episodes of Gravity Falls.
And I know that's a show you like.
I really enjoy Gravity Falls. And he also wrote for Disenchantment. I highly encourage you to check that out if you like Matt Groening's work, specifically like Futurama. This is Futurama with a fantasy bent.
Well, and let's talk about the movie. The movie, in terms of themes, it was it's PG.
Yes.
Very family oriented. In a really sweet kind of way, not sappy or...
When we say family-oriented, we mean things like, how does family affect your choices? You can really see how the Turtles' dynamics kind of trickle in and affect a lot of their decisions outside of the family, which I thought was kind of a neat touch.
That's a great point because there is an origin story. If you've never seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, say way back in the day, you missed it. Maybe you're younger, like Rebecca. You didn't start off listening to them, watching them. You don't know anything about them. The origin story is woven into the main story. Mm-hmm. And there's also the part where before there were well, that's not true. There were mutants from early on. but how do we say, they're teenagers, and they felt like teenagers. The banter, the dialogue.
I think a large part of that is the casting for this film.
That is true.
As I mentioned, Brady is 17. He's the oldest. And
he's the oldest? Wow.
Yeah, he definitely telegraphs the oldest. But I really like how it feels natural. It feels like I'm actually listening to a bunch of teenagers.
No, I totally agree with that. It felt like I was just sitting there, and like we go to movies a lot, or you're, sitting someplace and you're listening, and 4 teenagers and brothers.
Yes.
The familiarity, the overlap, the banter, just the teasing.
Yeah, no, the writing was really cool. It really put me into the place of the characters. And that was the big thing I was concerned about, especially because sometimes they feel older than teenagers in the different versions of the franchise that I've experienced. And it kind of takes away that compelling reason that you want to kind of journey emotionally with the characters. They don't have everything figured out.
And they don't pretend to.
No.
The part that I know this sounds older lady things, but it felt very sweet. Mm-hmm. And I liked that. There was a part about it where their connection was very genuine, very kind toward one another. And yes, they're razzing each other and they're going back and forth. But it wasn't mean. It wasn't a mean tease.
It wasn't malicious.
Malicious is a great word.
There's several moments where the characters are at odds with each other, but it feels organic. It feels natural. If you were in that situation as a sibling, you'd probably feel the same way. Or you'd at least understand where they're coming from. And Jackie Chan as Master Splinter also did a good job of portraying the fatherly figure without being too overbearing.
Well, and he was more than just the father figure. He was their dad. They referred to him as dad. He loved them like a parent.
Yeah,
he
and the parent-kid interactions also felt very natural too.
I would agree with that. Honestly, I would have loved to have had more dialogue. And if you've seen any of the trailers, if our cinema community has seen any of the trailers prior to the movie, they'll have a flavor or a taste of what it is, meaning the banter back and forth, kind of the tone. As far as I recall, the trailers had no spoilers of what was to come in the movie. But I could have listened to the banter a lot more.
The banter to me made this movie. The action is a little light, and I think that's just because the Turtles are just starting out their crime-fighting enterprise, if you will.
Yes.
But I feel like the dialogue sells this movie.
At this time, do we have any questions from the box?
Being that we saw it on opening weekend, were there any benefits you want to talk about?
Well, besides seeing it on Dolby Cinema at AMC, there's some goodies we got too. Here's a poster for your collection. And also a comic tie-in. This features a lot of covers from Turtle artists over the years, so you can kind of get inspired as well.
I think for me, I appreciated going in opening weekend. We were able to see it on Dolby, as you had mentioned. Seats were comfortable, not a huge crowd of people going in. Therefore, not a lot of buzz out and about. So I had the opportunity to go in blind and not have any spoilers, which added to my enjoyment to the movie.
I think so, too. I think going in blind will help you, especially considering this franchise has been running for a long time.
Correct. I agree with that. Do we have any questions from the box?
With many versions of the Turtles in existence, including an interpretation by Mr. Bay, does this have staying power versus those other movies?
I think this is a good origin story, and it's a good gateway for people to get into the franchise. So I think this one will have some staying power, especially given the relatability.
Well, and I appreciated, even though I knew the history, hearing the story, hearing the history reinterpreted, as it were, I enjoyed that part because it allowed me to come back to the present. It's like, oh, here's where we are now versus, oh, I remember this in the past. Oh, this was a little of this. So it wasn't like a kind of patchwork movie situation. It was all inclusive. It brought me present. And if they do a sequel, I would be open to seeing that. Rebecca, it's that time for the ratings on scale 1 to 5 moths flying. Where would they land for you on this movie?
I believe it's a 3 for me.
A 3 for you. And main reason for a 3?
It's not the best story, but it is a pretty solid look at what makes the Turtles the Turtles. And I think there was more room for opportunities that they didn't take. But it's a solid movie.
Okay, agreed. I would also give it a 3, even though I know you and I vary some. My main reason for a 3 is I would have loved more dialogue. I think the movie, time-wise, it was an hour and 39 minutes, which felt complete to me. However, minus some of the action, I would have enjoyed more dialogue. Hey, Rebecca, it is that time to talk about who we're not sponsored by today. Today we are not sponsored by Pizza Hut.
Pizza the Hut?
No, not Pizza the Hut. Okay, not the Spaceball guy. No, Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut, founded in 1958 in Wichita, Kansas. Pizza place.
That pizza place?
That pizza place. You know, the red roof building. You've seen Pizza Hut? You've eaten Pizza Hut.
Yeah, I've had them a couple times.
You don't sound excited.
Well, you're going to tell me why I'm excited. Why are we excited today?
Well, if they were sponsoring us, I would be really excited. Right now, I'm just kind of excited because they have actually a lot of restaurants. And did you know Pizza Hut is a worldwide enterprise, not just a United States pizza icon?
I did not know that.
Worldwide, they have 18,703 restaurants worldwide.
Ooh.
And how much money do you think they're making over there? They're making pizzas, and we'll talk about some of the things they're making, but you think they're making a little money or a lot of money?
I think they're making a moderate amount of dough.
Oh, wow, yes. They're making dough in their pizzas, but they're also making dough in the, financially. Mm-hmm. Over $1 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of pizza.
And this is the best part. The number of employees they have, 350,000. That's like bigger than most cities.
It's kind of scary. You have a little Pizza Hut empire.
Well, they should have a town, right? Pizza Hut. Population 350,000. And the thing that cracks me up is it's approximately. So they may have lost a few, they may have gained a few, but give or take, 5 or 10, 1,500 people. That's what they think they have right now. The other thing I loved about them is their building. They actually had an architect design their building. So it wasn't like, hey, can you just kind of build this little building with a red roof? It's like, no, we have a Chicago architect building their building, George Lindstrom.
Wow, very bougie.
I know, it's kind of the bougie. So Pizza Hut's been around, right, longer than me, longer than Dad, longer than most people we know that are still alive. The other part was interesting is I know you and I talked about that they serve Pepsi.
Yes, Pepsi, I think, is one of their corporate partners, correct?
Well, Pepsi acquired them in 1977.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so back when I'm like a little thing, right, they acquired them, and they have bought KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Okay.
Branded as KFC because, fried chicken is not popular these days. And Taco Bell.
I like Taco Bell.
Exactly. And
sponsor us, please.
Yes, and they're part of the Yum brand.
Very catchy.
Yeah, I know. I thought that sounded actually a little catchier than Pizza Hut. However, if they want to sponsor us, Pizza Hut it is. We're happy to call you that. And also different varieties. They have storefronts. They have deliveries. The one you may know of is the all-you-can-eat buffet.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no Pizza Hut. Now, I remember growing up, there wasn't a Pizza Hut in our city, but the next large city, there was a Pizza Hut. So whenever we would do, we would go to, not vacation, but we'd go up there for something, we'd always stop at Pizza Hut.
Oh, that's kind of a nice memory.
Yeah, so I liked Pizza Hut, right? And over the years, they've done, and I know you and I have talked about, their marketing is pretty
Their
creative.
marketing is what I remember the most.
But you don't remember the pizzas. I
just don't. I have people that bring me Pizza Hut once in a while, but their marketing always seems to get some measure of traction.
Well, and they do all kinds of crazy stuff, right? One of their big ones was, what year is it? 2001. They actually worked with the International Space Station to have a pizza delivered so they could put it in this oven, and right. So pizza in space. There's a theme. IKEA, they've did a joint venture with IKEA. Somehow they did like Swedish meatball pizzas and furniture, and that was like 2020. So that's recent.
I thought you were gonna say they did like a table that was designed like a pizza.
Right, in a round table, because maybe they sponsored IKEA, but they don't sponsor Cocoon Cast. The other one that I remember actually really well, and it's kind of weird that I remember it so well, it was an 8-year campaign. It was 91 to 99. The guy that created Mr. Bill, Walter Williams.
The SNL sketch?
Yeah. Okay, so this is...
That's weird.
Well, I remember that. One of my older brothers, this was his thing. He would, imitate Mr. Bill, and, well, my childhood was never the same. But he had done all kinds of sketches and all kinds of things. So I just remember that. And that partnership lasted 8 years. That was pretty wild.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty long for an advertising campaign if you think about it too.
Well, in Pizza Hut, in terms of they get marketing. If you like marketing, you appreciate creative marketing, they sponsor Back to the Future too.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, that was back in 89.
Yeah,
that was right before your time, but they offered sunglasses. You buy their pizza and they give you these little solar shades.
If anybody in our cinema community has some of these shades still, I'd be really interested to see a picture of them.
Oh, correct. Don't just say, hey, I have them, and say, hey, I'm wearing them.
Send us a picture, tag cinema community.
I'm just laughing. They give you these shades and also go, they smell like pizza. But yeah, they'd done that. They had done some video games. They had love or hate Trump, right? They did this crazy commercial with him and Ivanka, his first wife, when they were going through a divorce.
Oh, that is so weird.
Have you seen this
No.
commercial? So there's like one piece of pizza. She's like, I'm going to take it. And he's like, no, dear, we must split it in half, because they had this crazy contentious divorce. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is Pizza Hut's greatest idea. However, we're still talking about it.
It's merchandising. If you get you talking about the product, that means you're paying attention to the product.
Exactly. Ringo Starr.
Really? Ringo Starr?
Ringo Starr. Right. So this is my point is, Pizza Hut sponsors and finds really creative people. However, not such big fans of Cocoon Cast. However, let's talk about some of their products. They have pan pizza, stuffed crust pizza.
Stuffed crust.
Yes, I know. Thin and crispy pizza.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's kind of their original one. I kind of am a bigger fan of the stuffed crust.
crust.
They have Dippin' Strips pizza.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, it's, just, and then you eat it, right? It's pretty good. And the P-Zone, which is code for calzone, right? It's a pizza calzone. Yeah, I know the name leaves something to be desired.
Work on your naming department.
Exactly. They have the Big Dipper.
What is that, a pizza shaped like a star?
Well, it's for large parties. The Big Dipper.
Okay, all right. Okay, that makes sense.
And again, my favorite is the Bigfoot pizza.
Is it shaped like a foot now?
It's and again,
Did you turn around and go like this when you're getting it?
And not to be confused with the Big Food pizza, which is something that I just made up. It's the Bigfoot pizza, which growing up in the Pacific Northwest is part of. Yeah, I'm sure they were thinking of us, even though they started.
That's what
back
you need. Cryptid stealing pizzas.
Exactly. Well, they started in Kansas, but they know what they're doing.
Bigfoot crosses all sorts of lines.
Absolutely. So still in existence, still doing really well. International market, had to close a few over the years, but they're in Pakistan, UK, Australia. I mean, you name it, they're there.
Pizza.
And they didn't sponsor us.
I guess we Pizza the Hut.
We got Pizza the Hut.
If you enjoyed our review on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, please like, which helps more viewers find our cinema community, and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming reviews, and please share with our friends. And now it's time for a Retro Rewind. This week we chose The Breakfast Club.
Nobody wants to be in school, especially on a Saturday. But for the members of The Breakfast Club, attendance is mandatory. Emotions run high and preconceptions are shattered as they work together to write an essay before time runs out. Rebecca, tell us why you chose The Breakfast Club.
Teresa originally pitched the movie as a counterpoint to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, partially because these characters go through an emotional journey about maturing, not unlike our familiar turtle little friends.
And I agree with that. It sounds like turtles and people, and how does this go together? But we're also talking about teenagers and what is it like to be a teenager and how is that expressed? And I have fond memories of The Breakfast Club. I understand Breakfast Club predated you. I saw Breakfast Club back in the day when it came out. I was 15. Ironically, the movie is an R-rated movie, and it's not lost for me that 17 and older. However, I know if you watch it on television, it's downgraded. It could be a PG-13, or it could be, I think it's PG-14 with the caveat of, more, it talks about what it is to watch for. And I know that they trim some things down. However, I have an older brother who loves this movie as well. So I remember seeing it and then seeing it multiple times in the years that passed. And how old were you first time you saw it?
So I was 16. I was lucky. We get Sundance Channel on the TV at my parents' house.
Sure.
And I was able to see an uncut version. I was really surprised to find out this was an R-rated movie. I was thinking it was closer to an R-rated movie, but I was very surprised to find out it actually got an R rating on release.
Well, but let's go back. This movie was filmed and released in 1985. R ratings, PG, that sort of thing. The standard was slightly different. So I would agree that it could feel a little bit more like a PG-13. However, this is not a teenage movie necessarily for definitely younger teens. It has some really mature themes.
This isn't like Hughes' other movie that gets cited often as an example of finding yourself as a teenager. Pretty in Pink. It talks about some pretty intense topics from an emotional perspective. In fact, there's one point where the principal, you're pretty sure he's going to beat up one of the main characters.
Correct.
It's very intense.
Well, and that's just one aspect of it. And to clarify to our cinema community, we're talking about John Hughes.
That's correct.
My guess is, even if you don't know John Hughes by name, you would know one of his movies. St. Elmo's Fire, back in the 80s. His movies, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles.
Ferris Bueller.
Ferris Bueller. Home Alone is, I believe, the one that he has grossed the most from.
That's correct.
My favorite movie that he's done. My favorite movie that he has done.
I want to say Only the Lonely, but he only produced that one.
Correct. He only produced that. And my favorite John Hughes movie he wrote and directed is Planes, Trains, Automobiles.
Every year at Thanksgiving, we watch this movie.
We watch it. And Dad and I, first date, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. How do you not know Dad was a keeper?
Well, we watched Predator after that. So.
We did. First date. What'd you watch? Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And Predator. Somehow, the Planes, Trains, and Automobile resonated a little bit better in my heart. However, he is crazy talent, he passed away. Actually quite young, 59 he passed away.
This movie is also included in the Library of Congress's Greatest American Movies. For that reason alone, I also wanted to revisit it as well.
Sure, and it stars many actors and actresses that we know. Emilio Estevez, yes.
Anyways, I'm standing there waiting to use the payphone.
Yeah, he was, seriously.
And this guy who's on the phone turns around and tips his hat like this.
And who do you think that guy was?
Emilio Estevez.
The Mighty Duckman, I swear to God, I was there.
Of course you were. You were the one who yelled the Breakfast Clubber's name.
I was like, Emilio!
Judd Nelson and Molly Ringwald. She was in multiple John Hughes movies in the 80s before she...
Ali Sheedy, too.
And Ali Sheedy and Anthony Michael. Rebecca, this movie made quite a bit of money. I know the budget was $1 million, understanding 1985 money, understood, but it made actually $50 million.
So according to some quick Google math, that's about 5,000% increase.
Holy moly, so that's quite a rate of return. Also, it's funny to me knowing the actors and actresses were very familiar with their work now, and to think such an iconic movie that many people know, the actors, actresses they know, and to say, oh, the budget was $1 million
it's
versus
so wild
3-digit budgets these days.
Granted, a lot of the effects are focused around the cinematography, which is very deceptively simple. I want to spotlight Thomas Del Ruth's cinematography. It's a huge part of what makes this movie classic to me. It's deceptively simple. It tells you a lot about where the characters are emotionally. I want to particularly put notice on the library scene.
Yes.
Where Judd Nelson and Molly Ringwald are kind of having a back and forth. And then you have Emilio Estevez is literally in the middle. He's the emotional center, but then he starts to come into his own. You have Anthony Michael Hall's character more focused on Molly Ringwald's side of things. And then you have Ali Sheedy closer to Judd Nelson's character. I know it seems like a lot of this can be kind of taken for granted with the dialogue, but subtle visual cues like this help you get inside of the minds of the characters. Pay attention to who's being shown and not shown in certain scenes.
Well, and there's more depth to the movie in that respect, meaning had it just been a straight on camera or one camera on one person, it didn't jump a lot. It felt very natural to me. Was that your experience as well?
That was my experience too, because there's a lot of motion of the camera kind of creating the environment, showing how trapped a character may be. Mm-hmm. I know specifically we mentioned that there's a scene where the principal is attacking a student.
Sure.
And one of the things I was really impressed with was the closeness that came between these characters. There's also a couple scenes with some jump cuts, and the editors are more responsible for that, but you need material in order for that to work. And I think that Thomas's work allowed us to create that space that we can kind of join the characters.
Well, and I think when we think about the movie, we think of the actors, actresses. John Hughes obviously gets top billing lots of times, right? He wrote, directed, he helped produce. The other producer was Ned Tannen, and he's done a lot of movies. Remember American Graffiti, one of my dad's favorite movies.
We played it at the funeral.
We played American Graffiti at my dad's funeral. That's how much he liked it. Top Gun, Animal House. Remember Animal House when I was younger. Smokey and the Bandit, family friend of ours, one of his favorite movies. I've heard about that over the years. Coal Miner's Daughter won Academy Awards. Crocodile Dundee back in the 80s, back to the teenage movies again. The other part of the movie, Keith Forsey did the music, stood out, very iconic.
Very iconic.
The Simple Minds, the Scottish group, Simple Minds, back very synthesizer friendly. I was laughing because Keith wrote that song that Simple Minds played, and he also produced Billy Idol. And if you're of more of my age, you remember Billy Idol, Rebel Yell. He produced Billy Idol. He actually asked Billy Idol to sing that song.
That is so strange to me, picturing, and I'm not saying Billy can't do emotional ballads, but...
you're thinking of Wedding Singer.
I'm also thinking of White Wedding, too.
Yes.
You can argue that that's kind of a ballad in terms of its structure.
Interesting.
But I find it interesting to picture kind of this post-punk pioneer singing this very mellow song.
It would have been, we may have been having a different discussion. I know he asked Brian Ferry. He originally, actually, my understanding is he went to Simple Minds and said, hey, would you like to sing the song? And they're like, yeah, no, we're good. Apparently, other people felt the same way. Billy Idol, right? Brian Ferry, others all declined. And apparently Simple Minds went back to him. I don't know if it was a pity song and they're like, okay, guy, we like you, we'll sing it. But they ultimately ended up singing it, and it became very iconic. And Keith has done a lot of 80s music, Beverly Hills Cop back in the 80s, original Ghostbusters, just a ton of movies. So we would know him. But that song is iconic with this movie.
It's often used as emotional shorthand for teenage movies. I know, like, when people do like these parody trailers, it gets slipped in if you kind of want an 80s shorthand for that.
Do we have any questions from the box?
Being that you both saw this when you were in your teen years and now you're both older, has it stood the test of time?
I would say for me, it's still a movie I enjoy. However, I would say there are things that each time I've seen it, I notice more. And honestly, what stood out for me was the aspect around the drugs and understanding that some families may not be comfortable having discussions with their children around this. So we would respect that and understand that. However, for me, I don't know why, but this last time we watched it, it was more pronounced to me.
I know for me, I liked it more as I was younger. Mm-hmm. As I've gotten older, I've liked it less. And to me, I think that might be something speaking to, I feel like it's almost a passing glance at some of these things. I feel like
very much. I
feel like some of the characters are unevenly taken care of.
Okay. No.
By service of the screenplay. But there are some aspects that I enjoy more, especially like the cinematography. I remember watching it for the first time, it was rather flat to me. Mm-hmm. But when we went in for a retro rewind, I was specifically looking for things that I hadn't noticed that I think our greater cinema community could appreciate.
And that's a good way to look at it. Honestly, I appreciated Ali Sheedy more as a character. I know you and I had discussed how she was acting even without a large number of words. A lot of her nonverbal acting was really phenomenal.
I was also really focusing, since the last time I had seen it, I had actually complained about one of the major arcs.
Sure.
And you helped me reframe the context, so I appreciated it more.
Well, and that's a pretty interesting thing to say, that we've watched it, both you and I have watched it multiple times and seen it in your teens, right? I've seen it in my teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and now I'm in my 50s. So to be able to see it each, and it's not that I watch it every decade, but I've seen it, once or twice each decade at least. So it is interesting to say, this is what I've noticed now, this is how I see it differently. And honestly, even, having children, right, to say, what was it like for you in your teens and now in your late 20s? What is that like? To me, that's a classic movie that you can see it multiple times, see different layers, and still be open to seeing it yet again.
I also think part of the reason that helped us is you and I have experienced more of John Hughes' filmography together.
Correct, that's right.
At the time I had seen Breakfast Club for the first time, I had only seen a small sample of Hughes' movies. Mm-hmm. I'd say less than 3.
Right, and for me, growing up in the 80s, being a teenager in the 80s, the rite of passage was you see every John Hughes movie at least 10 times, and you enjoy them. And I did. And it was interesting when you and I were talking, because your dad and I were cautious with the movies that we let you see. However, every movie, I would say, we had discussions. So if there were more adult themes, we would have discussions. But it was funny, as we were discussing it, it didn't hit me that you were 16 and I was 15. I just found that really fascinating and pretty interesting as a parent to say, oh my gosh, we saw that movie around the same time, and had we lived around the same era, again, more woo stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But had we lived in the same era, we would have seen the movie at the same time, and what experiences do we have?
We also have different experiences too, so I think it's kind of cool to see how this movie kind of shines a light on how teenagers are seen now versus how they are back then.
Correct. I would agree with that. Okay, Rebecca, it is that time for the moth rating. Scale 1 to 5 moths rating. Where were your moths landing this week on the Breakfast Club?
I understand this is going to be kind of controversial for some folks, but I have never really fallen in love with this movie compared to some of Hughes' other works. However, it's still a solid movie, and I encourage our American cinema community to look at this as an important piece of cultural history at least once.
Yes.
So I'd say 2.5 moths for me.
Wow. Okay. And number one reason for 2.5?
There's more depth that this movie can get into, and that's not a failing on John Hughes. It's just how this movie is structured.
Okay. So I would say, for me, I would say a 3.5. And partially going back to the movie has stood the test of time for me, it feels very authentic as to the teenage experience, although I think there were some stereotypes that may or may not be so relevant today. However, being able to say, I enjoyed it in my 50s, you're in your 20s, I have family, I have an older brother that really loves this movie. And he's a real film buff. And I know that he sees added layers, just like you were talking about the cinematography. I would say it's a solid 3.5, maybe a little bit higher than that, but I feel comfortable with my Moss Landing at 3.5. If you have seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, or The Breakfast Club and want to share or watch our review with a friend, head over to our companion channel, Cocoon Cast Clips, where we take this show and cut it up into bite-sized clips. Perfect when you're short on time or just want to share a snack-sized review with your cinema community.
It's that time of the show where we hear from you, our cinema community.
Each week, we give you 2 opportunities to send us a video. This week, we're looking for you to send us a video clip where you answer the question, what was the first movie you saw in the movie theater? Tell us how old you were, what the experience was like. Give extra points for being creative, too.
Our second opportunity is for you to send in your review of our Retro Rewind for next week, Ford versus Ferrari. After you hear our review, we want to showcase your review for the cinema community.
For your clip, remember to keep it 60 seconds or less. Film it in landscape with good audio with no music. Then email it to us at hello@cocooncast.com. If you include your name and your mailing address, you will get a custom Cocoon Cast sticker pack mailed to you. That's right, you join our cinema community and we'll send you a nice thank you. In addition to your video clip, we want to talk about some of the cool comments we've been getting. Before each show, we check our comments. Potato Peel 19794 commented on our short for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Potato Peel said, "Love the positive vibes. Wouldn't have found your show without this short. Keep up the great content."
Hey, Potato Peel, we hope you're watching today because we want to spotlight your positive vibes too. Hope you've enjoyed the review of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. For the rest of our cinema community, this is an excellent opportunity to point out we do YouTube shorts before we go see our new releases. It's called Know Before You Go. And for a Retro Rewind, we also do What to Watch For.
Great. And we also received a comment from Big Tony Styles.
Big Tony.
Big Tony is back, and he is talking about Barbie and Haunted Mansion.
Did he talk about whether he's seen Oppenheimer yet?
Well, let's read his comment. All right, Big Tony, let's read your comment, and the wait may be over. Big Tony says, I wonder how long these strikes will last. Been seeing some studios, Netflix and Disney, post lucrative positions for AI engineers, which is a bit disheartening to see for the actors and the writing.
I think it's really tough anytime a major industry just suddenly goes, whoop. My guesstimate is about 4 months. I know the award season is coming up. I know that the WGA has started talks, but the award scene is a great time to spotlight how rough things are going to get without these particular industries, and I could see them holding on for a little bit more bargaining time.
Well, and I appreciate Big Tony's comment because I think we need to remember these are people that are striking. These are families. These are individuals who provide the content that we talk about. Obviously, our cinema community watches and enjoys as much as we do. And so there is a disheartening piece to it. However, we also notice Big Tony. You have not talked about if you've not seen Oppenheimer. So we're looking forward to hearing if Big Tony has seen Oppenheimer. We're not placing bets on you at this point, but we're kind of wondering.
I have $5 in my wallet somewhere.
All right, Big Tony, you heard it. $5 is yours if you go see it.
We'll mail you that and the sticker packet.
Exactly. Sticker packet for you, too, just for going to see Oppenheimer. We have a second comment on the Barbie movie. Pat and Bing say, Barbie is a marketing juggernaut. Malls are a big deal in the Philippines. One of them I visited had a Barbie, and what's his name? Ken. World would pop up. You could take pictures, being in a Barbie car, being in a Barbie box, car, dream house, etc. Means lots of things. And of course, buy Barbie stuff. Some of the malls have movie theaters and even ice ring with Barbie promos. Wow. Go Barbie. My sad childhood. Oh, big sad face. My thrifty parents brought me for Christmas a G.I. Joe knockoff. Sarcasm alert. One of his hands fell off the first week, so I experienced the horrors of war at an early age. The horror. Wow, Pat and Bing, I'm kind of worried.
that maybe I kind of want to see some of these Barbie malls now. They've got me really curious. If anybody in our cinema community has gone to these malls, send in some pictures of you and your family experiencing this.
Well, it tells you Barbie is a phenomenon. Pat Bing are correct. This is a worldwide phenomenon, right? We're in the United States, but in the Philippines, other parts of the world, Barbie is still a big thing. She has an ice rink. She has a dream house. She has a dream house over there too, apparently.
Business ladies be businessy.
Business lady be businessy. And so, yeah, I think that's a great point. And I honestly really appreciated the comment about the arm falling off. Not to make light of war, however, we all have action figures and dolls in our history, even if they're not Barbie and Ken. G.I. Joe, obviously there's a movie about that too. So I think it's an important point to note that worldwide Barbie is indeed a phenomenon. And just to remember, if you are video shy, feel free to send us a picture standing out front of your favorite movie theater. Tell us what movie you're going to, and tell us what you thought of the movie in the comments below. We love reading your comments, and we love reading them to our cinema community, and we appreciate them as well.
We really want to showcase your cinema community videos and photos, so please send them in by Wednesday, 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for a chance to be on the show.
And now it's time for Hollywood News. Rebecca, tell us what's going on out there in the Hollywood world.
There's some strike solidarity going on in Hollywood after it was revealed that certain productions received waivers. Viola Davis is actually stepping down from her project G20, even though there's a SAG-AFTRA waiver for the production.
And tell us, Rebecca, where are you finding this article?
Matt Groban of Deadline received an exclusive statement from Davis's team regarding this. Davis isn't the only one, but she's the first and most notable name to step down. Brad Pitt and Tobias Menzies also stepped down from Apex. It's directed by Joseph Kosinski, aka the guy who did Tron Legacy and Top Gun and also Oblivion. Very underrated. Highly encourage you to check it out. I'm going to compare this to somebody you may not expect. Tim Cook.
Oh, you're right. All right, tell me more.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Tim Cook is the CEO and head of Apple. Tim spoke in their quarterly earnings conference call about all the money Apple TV was making.
Wow.
But nothing about the strike.
Oh, my.
Let's put it this way.
Let's put it this way.
David Zaslav of HBO Max, known as Max now,
Yes.
is more interested in addressing the strike and coming up with a deal. I'll tell you why this is important. The big word on everybody's mind right now is optics.
Yes.
This is the Hollywood Reporter. I receive this magazine every week.
Yes.
This is one of the few magazines that we receive at the Cocoon Cast team to kind of let us know what's going in and around Hollywood. Give you an idea of the perception of Tim Cook. This is a visual graphic in the magazine. Zaslav is right here.
Wow.
Bob Iger, who we talked about last week,
Yes.
is at the very bottom.
Wow.
Graphics like...
Well, and I'm noticing, too, there's a thumbs up, thumbs down. So the lower you are down, the more... the more thumbs downy you get, it sounds like.
The more negative press
Correct.
that is being perceived towards you. Tim Cook is nowhere on this list, but Zaslav, who has taken programs off HBO Max...
And did you see the title on it? It says, "We feel your pain"?
Yes.
It's like, wow, wow. So you don't want to be on the bottom.
No. Zaslav has been courting good publicity, or at least attempting to, with some of the decisions that he's making. If Zaslav is ranking higher than you on this mythical pain-o-meter, that's a huge problem, especially considering that Apple has been increasingly trying to throw their weight towards independent productions.
Well, and I'm not on the pain meter, at least that one, as far as I know. However, I would say you're excited about this story.
I'm very excited because it means that big names are taking this seriously. You actually forwarded me an article from Hollywood Reporter a couple days prior to us taping the show about some of the bigger names donating money towards the community fund.
Right. Meryl Streep, George Clooney. I think George Clooney and Meryl Streep were the first two to jump on board. And they donated, if I recall, $1 million each toward...
I believe that's correct.
Correct. And they had other names. There's like 5 or 6 other names at this point, and others are joining. But those are two of the big names that jumped on board initially to start this. And we should tell our cinema community, where did the $1 million each person sponsored go to? Do you recall that?
I believe it's the community fund for
That is,
SAG-AFTRA.
that's correct. It's where it's going.
I'm really impressed because I was worried after Sarah Silverman's statement last week that a lot of Hollywood wasn't going to take this seriously, especially the upper echelon of Hollywood. They're just going to be like, I got a waiver, whatever, so what? But it's really nice to see actors and actresses like Viola Davis.
Sure, no. And she's a great actress, so she pulls weight. If she says no, that says something in Hollywood, and I agree with that the well-known actors and actresses we know, they're no better, but they have a higher platform, therefore maybe these people will start to hear them.
It also allows the strike to be sustainable for the lower level actors and actresses.
Absolutely, because they're risking their livelihood as well. That's great. Do we have any discussion questions?
With these actors and actresses pulling out, do you think this puts pressure on the independent productions that have waivers to go ahead and just stop at this point as opposed to proceeding with their productions?
I think this puts a huge amount of pressure. It now says that just because you're independent doesn't mean that you can escape this.
Correct. And anytime there's division, that may work to their advantage of saying, well, some people can continue to do this. It is, and we discussed it in last week's show, it is always tricky because the more independent, are they losing the income that they need? Are they being punished, if you will, from the studios that can and the individuals that can waiver this longer?
It also closes the loophole more that with these independent productions, a lot of these more developed media companies that buy the rights and employ these production companies to make content, it kind of closes that.
In some lighter Hollywood news, let's talk about John Williams.
I always love to hear about John Williams.
For cinema community who may have not heard of John Williams, let's tell them who he is. John Williams is
a fantastic composer. Sorry, that was your line.
Oh. So I'm reading, yes, we read the Hollywood News, Variety. I actually read this in Forbes magazine. This is Daryl King, wrote about the Maestro of the Music. He entitled the article, Re-Listening to John Williams, the Maestro of the Music. And as we were talking about to our cinema community, most people know who John Williams is. However, John Williams has had a 50-year collaboration with Steven Spielberg.
He truly is the maestro of the movies. I mean, to work with Spielberg that long.
In every movie up until, where are we at? Fabelmans he did last.
I love Fabelmans.
But Spielberg, every Spielberg movie has John Williams.
Except for Bridge of Spies. But even then, that felt very
Well,
Williams-esque.
that was Thomas Newman.
But except for a few points in the music, I thought I was listening to a Williams soundtrack.
That's pretty good. Well, in part of the article had said something that was really interesting to me. I hadn't really thought of it this way. He said, no one under the age of 50 has experienced a movie without Spielberg and John Williams working together.
I find that so strange, but it's really exciting to see such a long-term collaboration remain in Hollywood and continue to bear fruit.
Well, to me, it's just hilarious, right? Because I'm 53. Ooh, 53. The big 5'3", coming up to the big 5'4", which sounds like a phone number, but big 5'4". Well, and I know we had talked about the first movie I had seen in the theaters. You remember what that was?
I want to say Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I'm wrong, right?
Correct. So when I was 8 years old, I saw Star Wars. My older brother, or I should say one of my older brothers, and my dad lived in a college campus town, so there was a theater right outside of campus. Went and saw that. And I remember afterwards, my dad said, pick something from the movie that we would like, meaning an action figure or something. And my older brother is 4.5 years older than I am. He actually wanted the soundtrack. It was double records. He played that thing nonstop. I remember we went to my grandmother's house and my grandmother goes, oh, what's that? So my brother, on our turntable back in the record days, popped it on and he turned it up really loud.
Oh, crap.
And we're running around her house listening to the music and doing, oh my goodness. So that's my introduction to John Williams
That is so wild.
when I was a kid. I mean, I 8 years old, and I loved it. Obviously, a lot more than my grandmother did. However, I love the music. And as you said, Raiders of the Lost Ark, we've seen that performed live with orchestra music. I know we had talked about Schindler's List.
Schindler's List, I think, to me, is the definitive Williams work.
Wow. Well, and we've seen Isaac Perlman actually perform
Certain selections
from Schindler's List. And I know we had talked about it in terms of how iconic it was for us. I remember listening to that when I was pregnant with you, and then going full circle and seeing Isaac Perlman.
I know for us, musical education was very important, so we would listen to cinema scores as examples of wider instrumentality in music, and one of the frequent things being played was the Schindler's List soundtrack.
No, and it was in Indiana Jones. I
Yes.
know growing up we played a lot of that, and we played the classical composers, Mozart, Beethoven, and that sort of thing. However, the soundtracks were very iconic and very, to me, just felt sometimes a little bit more relatable.
Well, and then there's many instances where you've played me soundtracks years before I was allowed to see the movie.
Sure, and that's true. And you loved music. Our family, as you said, right? Our family loves music. So John Williams has always been part of my childhood, my adulthood, being married, having children. I mean, it's all of that. And I laugh because we were talking about John Williams has announced his retirement more than once. 2018, he was planning to retire, after the Star Wars Rise of Skywalker?
Yes. After the Rise of Skywalker, Williams said, "That's it. I'm not doing anything else." I interpreted that as he was done. Apparently, he said he was done from Star Wars, but then he came back and decided to go, "Hey, let's do the main theme for the Kenobi show."
And as we had talked about, we had reviewed Dial of Destiny.
That's
the
correct.
Indiana
During our
Jones
pre-production phase, we reviewed Dial of Destiny.
Correct. Dial of Destiny came back out in June of 2022. Back out again. Then he's announced he's going to do another piece. So he's not done yet.
10 more years, folks.
Well, and let's talk about that. John Williams says, "I'm done." Comes back. Okay. He did Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg's Fabelmans.
We should totally do that for a retro rewind.
Absolutely. Our cinema community, if you have not seen that, wait for a review on that. We definitely want to talk about that. But then he says, "Okay, I'm coming back now this year, right? 10 more years." Let us remember how old John Williams, Mr. Maestro, Sir John Williams, how old do you think John Williams is?
John Williams of the Boston Pops, I want to say 90.
91. He was born
Whoa.
in 1932. For reference sake, my father was born in 1935. So he is older than my dad would have been had my dad lived.
Do I make your dad jokes? Man.
No, I'm blown away. And it's not that you can't be 91 and still keep going, but
He keeps going.
But
It's not like
let's
slow,
do the
but-
math. I'm 91 and I want to keep going for 10 more years. Okay, basic math, cinema community. That makes the man 101.
That literally means I can pop down to the local symphony hall and go, "I want a century retrospective of John Williams," and they'll have like at least 70 years worth of material to work for.
All right, and let's look at the last perspective. I'm thinking, we do the math. Okay, the man's 101. Wrap my brain around that little piece. So my whole life will be this man. I won't be quite retired, but I'll be close. You'll be almost 40 when the man retires. Perspective yet again.
This is wild.
This is wild. And I'm not hoping he goes away anywhere soon. I think he's still
What
producing.
about vacation? That man needs a vacation. I think he needs to go on vacation.
Well, he doesn't need to retire because every time he does, he comes back. But I would say...
You think he's gone?
You think he's gone. He's not Bob Iger. But I would say I have no problem with him coming back. In fact, I'm very excited about him coming back. But I would say the funny part of it is he doesn't want to retire, clearly. And this last time, instead of saying it and coming back, even I think he understands the joke of, okay, I'll just say 10 years, that covers me. But he's still producing great music. There's no, well, I don't know. Maybe he does need more than a vacation. Maybe he does need to retire because there's, life ambition. But I'm like, I think this is his life ambition. Thanks for joining us this week. We're always excited to create experiences to bring our cinema community together.
Next week, we are excited to be reviewing Gran Turismo. And for a Retro Rewind, Ford versus Ferrari.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and to share our channel.
If you enjoyed the show, you might want to check out last week where we reviewed the Barbie movie and Haunted Mansion.
Remember, cinema community, movies are
Better together.
Thanks for watching. See you next week.